Steinhauser.
Yes.
I'm a collector.
And Ann Cohen is also Ann Cohen is also a collector.
I'm Ann Cohen Ruderman now, and I'm a collector, and I'm still on the board of Pilchuck. Probably the longest lasting forever. I came on in 1994, and I won't leave. It's the most fun I've ever had. And the main thing about Pilchuck is not.
She's answering all my questions. Just
Okay, sorry.
Anne likes to lead.
Yes.
Anne likes to lead.
Hold on just a second. So Anne is also, before she goes on and tells you her whole biography, I have to earn my keep today. She's also the founder of the Glass Alliance of Los Angeles. So, and that is a big support group for glass, as one might imagine. And it also has given scholarship funds over the course of its existence to different organizations. And San Bernardino, Cal State San Bernardino, has been a recipient as well as Santa Monica, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. But the scholarships are mainly, the money goes to Pilchuck, and the students come from Southern California.
So they give money to Pilchuck so they can sponsor student artists to go to Pilchuck so they don't have to pay the tuition. So when I asked Susan Steinhauser, not Susan Stinson.
I want to be Susan Stinson.
When I asked her to talk about collecting, the first thing she said to me is, well, you know, we no longer collect glass.
I wanted to be honest.
So I said, well, but you're still a collector. Once a collector, always a collector. So Susan and Dan, her husband, started probably collecting other things, but my relationship with them was over glass. That's how I got to know them. And then from glass, I think you went into photography, from photography to jade. And that's where you are now.
Yes.
Okay. So,
No?
no?
We're still in photography. Too.
Well,
But you've added
yes,
jade to
yes.
the repertoire.
We're parallel collectors.
Okay. But you still have a great respect for glass and
Yes.
collecting glass.
Yes.
So I want to start by asking you both, why did you start collecting studio glass? What drew you to this medium?
My husband drew me to this medium, and I'd like everyone to know who my husband is.
Stand
Dan
up.
Greenberg. And he will be chiming in from time to time. You will have no control. When I was in law school, I was not very available to my husband. And to amuse himself, he went down to our local gallery. And the local gallery at that time was Delmano. And Jan was there, and Ray was there. And the studio glass movement was just getting started. This was the mid-'70s. And my husband has grown up in a household where one of the prime concepts is value. And he thought that glass was very good value at that time, as well as being very beautiful. It was very good value because at that time you could get an artwork without really breaking the bank, without really breaking your piggy bank, without being still able to pay your mortgage. So the fact that it was very affordable, but it was also very exciting because it was a new medium. Studio glass had really just come of birth in the 60s with what Harvey Littleton and Dominique Labino had done in Ohio. Before that, like Susan was saying, it was really in the factories. It was in Dome in France, it was at Itola in Finland, it was at Waterford in England. And it was only when those two men really broke out of the box and said, how do we do this in our garage? Did all of us collectors really get to start having fun? So Dan spent a lot of time at Delmano. I think there was also Curlin Summers at that point in time, which was a great gallery. I think at one point in time we actually had 3 galleries in LA that were considered only glass galleries, and then Delmano also had work. And what I always say to people is 3 years later, when I graduated, I not only had my JD, I had a glass collection. And if I like to collect one of everything, my husband likes to collect 10 of everything. And the good thing is, whatever he collects, it is excellent. It just means that we have very little space to live in our house, and a lot of space for the glass. But I think what also attracted us to glass, as Susan was saying, when we started collecting glass, it was really all about vessels, because a lot of the folks who came into glass had been in ceramic. And so it was really about the vessel, and it was, could you make it? And, you know, how beautiful would it be? But I think what we haven't yet touched on is what's really terrific about glass is light. And what happens to it. It really comes alive when you put it in the light.
We'll get
And
into those more
but
meaningful
you wanted
questions
to
in
know,
a minute.
but you wanted to know what attracted us to it. And it was
Beauty,
light and what
light,
happened.
and value. Beauty, light, and
Value was very important.
Okay, well, I'll reorder them. Value, beauty, and light. And Anne, what about you?
I forgot the question.
Why did you start to be involved in collecting studio glass as opposed to other things? I know that you had a photography collection too and furniture collection.
We started mainly with photography, black and white photography, many, many years ago, when everybody kept on saying to us, don't you know that there's a negative? And people can redo the photographs. We loved it. We wanted to collect black and white nudes because we have a Art Deco collection of furniture. And that was our first collection. And then we went on to the black and white nudes, and we couldn't afford them after a while because people did become interested and they were buying a lot of it. And so we had friends who took us on a trip with GAS, G-A-S, and we went to see collections, and I'll never forget it. We were in San Francisco and we went to Atherton to the Roses. And this was a couple, middle-aged, late middle-aged, and they had the most incredible glass house I ever saw. And they collected glass. And through the glass, when you have glass and it sparkles, it is absolutely a turn on. We had to go have it. So with GAS, they also suggested to go into this place called Pilchuck. And Pilchuck at that time had, they already had the tour, the auction tour. And we met these people on the bus by the name of Doug and Dale Anderson, who were very big collectors, and they were the Mickey Roonies of glass at that time. And they said, let's have a party, and they wouldn't let me off the bus until I said I would join the board. And I got on the board of Pilchuck, and it is incredible. But the reason we were collecting glass, my late husband and I, was because you met the artist. First of all, technically, glass is probably the hardest product to work with. You have so much loss, it's so hard to get it right. And you really have to be committed. And these artists were all fantastic, and they were committed. And how many at that time, who were you going to meet? You weren't going to meet Picasso, you weren't going to meet all these great artists, but the glass artists were all available, and we became friendly, and
So they were accessible.
They were very accessible.
And if you took a tour and you were with Pilchuck, they would open up their studios, and you felt like you would become part of their life. So as a collector, it's very important to know. I mean, a lot of collectors say they want to know who they are buying from, because it gives them a sense of their history of the person who made the piece, like an imprint.
That's not
that
what
wasn't it for you. Okay.
Because a lot of times you really don't like the artist.
Scratch that.
But you really like what he's doing.
And they're all men.
And they're all, so it's not exactly, it's what it is you want the technical, the conceptual, and the finished product. And we always liked sculpture. We did not like just buying a glass or a vessel. It wasn't our thing. We were into sculpture. Unfortunately, I don't collect glass anymore either as much, but I still love the minimal glass, like Mark Zirpin, for instance, that the minimality is keeping up with minimalism, that's keeping up with what is happening in art right now. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, you did. What role did Pilchuck play in educating you about glass and about collecting glass?
I think I came to the Pilchuck board. I had been asked originally by Mark Haley in 1993. And I said no, because I wanted to make sure that when I make a commitment, I could really follow through. And he was very insistent, and he asked me again in 1994. But just to give you a little bit of back history, what happened to us, we met George and Dorothy Sachs, who were very influential in the craft movement, including in glass. And we went to a Pilchuck, they told us, come to this Pilchuck dinner. And then frankly, when we went to the Pilchuck dinner, I didn't think that people did a very good job at embracing us and welcoming us. So that when I was asked to go on the board, it wasn't a place I wanted to go. And George actually said to me, why did you not come back? And I told him. So he said, come the next time and I'll watch out for you. And then I went on the board and I got to know the Haleys very well. And they're on the Tacoma side. And one of the great things that happens when you're at a place like Pilchuck, if you're an Angelino and you're going 4 times a year to Seattle, not only do you get to know Pilchuck, you get to know to Seattle. So if you get to know Seattle and then you get a job offer there, I mean, you know exactly what's going on. So it's a little bit of a plus. But I think what Pilchuck held for everyone, and I think what we heard earlier from Susan and Hiromi, is that it's a sense of community for artists. And if you really think about it, it's like a residency. It's like a sabbatical. You go to Pilchuck and for 2 weeks, all you do is live, breathe, think. When you go to your regular life, no one really gets you. What are you doing, a glass artist? But when you're there, you're really with your people. And I think for all of us who really cared about glass, and I think why I chose to accept Mark's offer is because we like the medium. And we feel when we embrace a medium and we start collecting it, it's our job, our role, to really know a lot about it. You know a lot by going to the galleries, and I can't emphasize just how important the galleries are. They really are, first and foremost, educators. You know, and then secondly, there are also sales people. And then you can obviously go to books. But if you really care about the medium as a collector or as an artist, it's really when you go up to the institution that is going to support this medium, that's going to grow this medium, and we learn from one another. I don't think well as an artist, but I will tell you, most of the artist board members, I don't know about Susan, don't do very well as business people. And you still have to look at a profit and loss statement. You still have to look at the balance sheet. You have to think about how you're going to take care of your HR issues. But for me, what I think I really saw is just how difficult it is. I remember they said, blow a piece of glass, and I thought, I can out-talk anyone. I certainly can blow a bubble. When I couldn't do that, I decided I could cast glass because I worked out with weights. Those really get heavy when you're taking those ladles. So I think it's almost like you don't really appreciate the ballet until you take ballet lessons. You don't really appreciate Rod Laver or whoever you watch in tennis until you play tennis. When you go, you really learn, and it really put me at ease at saying there's so many different kinds of glass that you have the hot glass, the warm glass, the gold glass, the neon glass, the engraved glass, and it gives you some concept. But I think anytime you go on a board, the board needs to look very carefully at what can you bring to that board, but you also need to say, what do I get out of that board? And I think we got a community. I think we really got a reunion, that 4 times a year it was like getting back together with the best high school class to try to really make something happen.
Pilchuck taught me about glass. I think that's the only way I can put it, because you understood the artists, you understood what they went through, and Pilchuck brought you the Seattle community, as Susan said, and that is magical. It's the most unusual community I've ever been involved with. So there are people who are just wonderful, and they're kind to you, and they love you for being there. So it's almost like you're giving them a gift, and Pilchuck is giving you a gift, because the education I got there and the board, being on the board, is like not a problem. If I say I can't do this right now, I'm too busy. Oh, no problem. What else can we do for you? They're just a great community and a board of people that come together, and they don't have a whole lot of ambassadors like Susan and I, because it's
the local jam.
Yeah, it's very hard to get to Pilchuck if you live in in New York or any other place besides LA is still a slam dunk. But it is a wonderful place to be on the board.
And I just want to add one other thing. For all of you, this is what I did on this board, when my husband on the boards he served on. It's not only about the art, but if you really think it is about sociology and how people come together. And even though we're all with our handhelds, we still have a desire to go, look people in the eye, eyeball to eyeball, or touch them. And I really think that in Seattle, they did something very smart when Seattle was really coming of age in the 60s, that a lot of the founding fathers and founding mothers of Seattle made a pact that they would sit on a board. They would sit on the theater board, or the opera board, or the ballet board, or the Pilchuck board. And John Halbert, for a very long time, wrote our checks. I remember how surprised the board members were when they had to start giving, because John wasn't going to write all the checks anymore. But the idea was that once each of these founding moms and dads of Seattle did their time, then the next board would come in. And so I think the whole idea of camaraderie and groups and healthy communities, that's part of what being in Seattle and being with Pilchuck was.
So where is the next board going to come from? Do you think it's going to come from maybe some of your members from Gala, or Susan, from some of the
Are you
people
talking
that
about
you know?
ambassadors from here
Yes.
to Seattle? Unfortunately, I don't think so. I think there are so many people involved in cancer research, giving to cancer, giving to different things that has to do with hospitals, children who are hungry. When I tell someone I'm on mainly arts boards, and that's my interest. Thank God my husband, who's involved in everything that has to do with cancer and other things like that, because I feel that there isn't that many of us anymore who are giving to art boards, and they really truly need it.
It is, and this is probably leading Jo astray, but you can't really control your speakers. You can just kind of
Wait a minute.
You can just kind of direct them.
Where's my taser? Can you set up my person?
Is
You
that
got two of the wrong girls.
for all of you who believe in the arts, and for all of you who believe in philanthropy, and you don't have to write a big check to be a philanthropist. You just need to write a check. The bottom line is, it's getting very hard in the philanthropic community now to raise money for the arts. The people in social services are really pitting your social service philanthropic dollars against the arts. And I think there is an equally good argument to be made for both. But if any of you are in the arts and can speak firsthand about the beauty that it gives you, the way it fills you up, the way that going to your doctor doesn't necessarily, how just it carries you to a different level. It's really important that all of us realize Richard reminded me, I'm an advocate, that we need to have not only private funding but public funding for the arts. If our kids don't continue to have arts and music in the schools, what do you think is going to happen to a place like Pilchuck? So it's really important all of us can speak to the impact that the arts have on us.
Since both of you have been in the field for a long time, longevity is important for experience.
So is quality.
And quality. What have you seen? What kind of shifts have you seen that's happened with glass?
I do want to say something again. I should have said that about Susan and Dan.
We're like sisters.
That when I first started going to the Craft and Art Museum, I saw these two names on everything that was donated. It said donated by Susan Steinhauser and Dan Greenberg. And I said to myself, boy, I would love to meet these people. They are donating such cool stuff. And so I did want to mention that.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. So I see, are you asking more or less of where you see glass going as art?
No.
What is
What
the
shifts
question?
have you seen since you've been collecting for over 25 years? I know neither of you are collecting now, but when you first started collecting, did you see it was more vessel oriented, less experimental? Has it become more daring now? Is it more crossover into contemporary issues?
I think Susan will be the nicer one on this one. But I will tell you, glass is losing me because I don't see a shift going totally forward, and it's not the artist's fault. I think it's the collector's fault. They still want to see something pretty and vesely and colorful. And I like to see minimalism. I would like to see things out of the box. And I think they are doing it. They would like to be doing it, but they're not getting support from, if you're not making any money, where do you go? So,
But as a board member at Pilchuck, I'm sure you can voice your opinion and say that, as a school, we need to support artists to take a risk. We need to have.
Seattle has one little thing. It's a little bit provincial in its own way, and I think when you speak like that at the board and you do say it, they'll listen. I don't know how, Mark Serpil is the only example I could really give that I know of who's really doing something like off the charts, and he's teaching, so obviously he's not making money off of selling his work. And I think they are trying to do something experimental right now. They talk about 3D, which to me, again, I agree with Annie Hubbard. It's not art. I don't want to see something being copied and then, I think glass is still, we'll talk about provincial, glass is still glass that you should be doing in a hot shop and getting it to your, I'll let Susan speak.
I think I very much admire everything that Annie stands for, and she's got an amazing aesthetic. I think maybe I differ a little bit on her on the conclusions. We found the most exciting time to be collecting was probably the 80s and the 90s. Then we found that glass was in a little bit of a hibernating mode, at least studio glass was in a kind of hibernating mode for 10 years, and that echoes what Bill Warmis has actually said. But I came prepared for this question, Jo, and it just so happened that I bet you all have the April-May craft article that was written by Tim Tate and Monica Moses that talks about the secession. And I don't think it really means that studio glass is going to be extinguished or eliminated. I just think it's moving to the next level. And I don't know how much we're going to have, that it's not going to be so identified by technique, that we're really moving to now is more concept. And I think you started to see this in like Jeremy Lapisto's work. You saw it in Jeffrey Sarmiento's work. You're seeing it in some what we would identify as fine artists who incorporate glass into their work, like Kiki Smith, Sherry Levine when she did the Brancusi newborns. I think also Josiah McElhaney, who was at one point in time on our board, but who even now is a little bit Woody Allen-esque in terms of not being very happy about self-identifying as an artist in glass. Susan and I were talking about that, and why not? And what I see is between the movement on the part of newer artists who are using glass like Sarmiento and mainstream artists who are incorporating glass, I think there is a future for glass. I think it's just a matter of being innovative. And I would highly suggest this article to anyone. And it's very positive. And I mean, even Tim Tate, I remember when I first saw one of his pieces, and I don't know if those who work purely in studio glass, because I'm not caught up in that rarefied atmosphere, that he had a video inside of it. And so I think this whole idea, sometimes we call it intersection. I just went to some seminar where everyone is so busy now about talking about cross-silo, and I think they called it the collision. So when you have the collision of different media, but hopefully it's a collision with no negative consequences, but it's bringing different things together, and that's where the next era is going to be for glass.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else have some questions?